Achilles Heal by yours truly. Attention all bar/non-bar members. Note, bar members refers to all beings who are oathed to the Crown/Temple Bar and are therefore foreign agents, citizens of the City of London State, aliens, with special use of Crown copyright as outlined by the Crown Corporation Board of Directors. Non-bar members do not have use of Crown copyright, and anyone using any Crown copyrighted intellectual property are, in fact, committing fraud by omission, commission, knowingly, unknowingly, where all are doing so are guilty of unclean hands. Listen up, cops. That's you. And you're on our side, by the way. You just don't know it. Inasmuch as ignorance is not a defense of the law, it is incumbent upon all claims to prove intent of that ignorance, and furthermore, to prove the intent of all parties who are attempting to maintain, reinforce that ignorance, to control a monopoly over humankind. A crime is not a crime unless all assumption and presumption is nullified, where one is guilty or innocent via willful intent only. With that out of the way, let's get busy exposing the Achilles heel of the legal system as it pertains to Admiralty law, Phoenician law, upon which all legal matters are based. Where the spoken word, phonics, is fraught with assumption and presumption, I'm going to spell it out for you. As a quick example of the wordplay, phonics, that is the art of the Magi Straits, where assumption and presumption can be interpreted in many ways, let's see how a presiding judge can be interpreted to have intent to kill, shall we? An innocuous word like presiding, as used in presiding judge, can be presumed merely as someone sitting at the bench. With the prefix of pre, which means prior to or before, the word preside becomes before side, as in choosing a side beforehand. In phonics, the sound of side is also spelled C-I-D-E, as in homicide, genocide, infanticide, etc., which means to kill. That means the word preside, or preside with a C, can be interpreted to mean to before kill, or as in presiding before killing, such is the true nature of Phoenician Admiralty law. Therefore, it can be proven with intent that all presiding judges have intent with premeditation to kill or commit murder by omission, commission, where ignorance of this fact is not a defense, and where ignorance of this fact renders all judges incompetent who shall claim ignorance. Catch-22, where a presiding judge is damned if they do, damned if they don't claim ignorance and make amends to be free of the unclean hands. See the following excerpt from Black's Law, 9th edition. Clean Hands Doctrine. The principle that a party cannot seek equitable relief or assert an equitable defense if that party has violated an equitable principle such as good faith. Such a party is described as having unclean hands. For example, Section 8 of the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction Act contains an unclean hands provision that forbids a court from exercising jurisdiction in a child custody suit in certain situations, as when one party has wrongfully removed a child from another state, aka the Crown, has improperly retained custody of a child after visitation, aka the Crown, or has wrongfully removed a child from the person with custody, aka the Crown. The Clean Hands Doctrine evolved from the discretionary nature of equitable relief in English courts of equity, such as Chancery, also termed Unclean Hands Doctrine. Enough said. While it appears to me that the vast majority of lawyers, judges, police, government officials, etc., are vastly ignorant of what the legal world is all about, it's time for you to get educated, and I simply ask that you disprove, if you can, what you're about to read in commonly understood English, where Phoenician law, assumption, presumption is hereby, heretofore, nullified ab initio. It has been nearly 3 years since a judge bowed to me in an open court and witnessed now by countless millions. It is rather unfortunate that the vast majority of lawyers, judges, police officials, government officials, etc., are owned by their egos and greed, their status and perceived elevated level of self-importance. I have met many of you that have been bought and paid for, and many of you have inflicted great harm to myself, my family, and countless other members of humanity via this greed and pure insanity. The well in which you drink from is filled by the blood of your fellow humans, rendering those drinking both cannibals and vampires of the lowest order. It matters not to me if you stop reading this, because my intent is already in place, immovable, unstoppable, and indestructible, such is the way of natural, universal law, where all man-made laws are merely mimics distorting truth. It is much easier to control people via their ignorance and greed with man-made justifiers like, I'm just doing my job, or I was just following orders, etc., ad nauseum. Unfortunately, for you, a mirror exists, and I am that mirror, where you will get to see yourself as you truly are. In short, the whole system you worship is based in fraud absolute, with intent to deceive, and, like universal law, there is no statute of limitations on fraud, period. Only intense greed, selfishness, willingness to harm others, etc. keeps you under control of your masters. Please feel free to investigate me and my story, and all the information shared here. You can also reach me, the unnamed, in voice, via my cell phone at 226-971-9675, where my voice is mine, unique only to myself in frequency, where no id entity exists. Here are a few facts you'll need to disprove. 1. All registrations become the sole property of the Crown Corporation, such as living people, corporations, cars, banks, homes, money, etc., by willful ignorant of the facts. By a willful ignorant of the facts act. 2. All names are Crown-owned copyright. Note, COC, or as I will refer to it, COC. And any all use of such names without express consent of the Crown Corporation, UPU, Vatican City State, et al., is, in fact, a criminal act of stolen identity, fraud. 3. The birth certificate is proof of intent to aid and abet the user of such document to commit fraud unknowingly, via deception, where any all registry buildings, offices are the proof of premeditated intent to do so by virtue of them simply being in existence. 4. Any all use of the birth certificate, long and short forms, to procure any all identification where using the name upon it is claimed, is a stolen identity and counterfeit in nature. 5. Any all contracts entered into using the name, assuming the name, are null and void ab initio, nunc pro tunc, where the party that offers the contract is guilty of aiding and abetting the other party into commission of fraud. As an example, any all banks that offer a mortgage, death pledge, contract, are in fact aiding and abetting knowingly, unknowingly, by commission, omission, another into a fraudulent contract, and are guilty with intent, where ignorance is not a plea of defense. 6. Any all claims of ownership of any all things registered is, in fact, a proclamation of theft, where one is already in possession of stolen property by virtue of the registration. As an example, if one were to hand over an ownership registration document of a car with a birth certificate name on it, one is already guilty of theft and aids and abets their own guilt by doing so. 7. Any all parties that carry licenses. Now there's a list of things here that you need to read from Black's Law, but a couple of things that I want to point out to. The legality of an act, especially of a sacrament. Licity is distinguished from validity in ecclesiastical law. Pay attention. Although an act or some part of it may be illegal, hint, hint, its performance or effects may be valid. That, in a nutshell, says that every law and act on the books that are man-made are in fact illegal. License, which is a noun from the 15th century, comes from the word licentious. A basic and brief understanding of licentious is that one who carries a license is saying that I am licentious, or a sexually or morally depraved criminal. Enjoy your licenses. License, a permission usually revocable to commit some act that would otherwise be unlawful. I'll read that again. 15th century, it's a noun, license. A permission usually revocable to commit some act that would otherwise be unlawful. Basically, it's a license to commit crimes. Any license. Continuing, especially an agreement not amounting to a lease or profit prondra, that it is lawful for the licensee to enter the licensor's land to do some act that would otherwise be illegal, such as hunting, game. Here's the catch. C, servitude. Licensee from 1864. One to whom a license is granted. 2, one who has permission to enter or use another's premises, but only for one's own purposes and not for the occupier's benefit. The occupier, I put this in bold, the occupier has a duty to warn the licensee of any dangerous conditions known to the occupier, but unknown to the licensee. An example of a licensee is a social guest. Well, let me make it very clear to the Crown, the occupier, the foreign agents from the City of London State who are the occupiers. They have a duty to warn the licensee, us, of any dangerous conditions, i.e. committing fraud by using a name, known to the occupier. Well, of course they know about it. They printed the fucking birth certificates, right? But unknown to the licensee. Well, of course it's unknown to us because they didn't want to tell us. They would rather us walk around in ignorance, committing crime after crime after crime, thereby rendering them in full honor at all points. Not anymore. Tables turn. Catch 22. Jesus is in your temple. He's having a field day. Pretty cool guy. I liked him.